So when it comes to food shoots, or in this case, food/grocery store shoots, they typically take a decent sized crew where you can stop down to the favorable T8 to make sure everything is in focus. And for those grocery store shoots, you typically want to do those overnight. Where I'm located in St. Louis, there's two major grocery stores. The Dierbergs, which is a family-owned and family-named grocery store, and Schnucks, same thing, family-owned, family-named. And they compete all the time. I know a few of the production companies that have that Schnucks as a client, and some of the commercials they've been making for them are pretty fun. They look great, and although it's your local grocery store, these freaking grocery stores can move $1 billion in a year. So there is some money for these productions. Dierbergs, on the other hand, has great commercials as well, but the project that we were shooting on was a little bit more run and gun. The agency I was working for has close friends to the marketer who works for Dierbergs and I think lives in the neighborhood kind of thing. And this was an opportunity to maybe get Dierbergs to clap back at some of the popular Schnucks commercials. At least that's how I kind of took it, and wanted to say, ooh, now we can maybe, get our hands dirty and our feet wet or whatever with these grocery stores and maybe start capturing some cool footage. But no, for this project, we were a little more run and gun. It was myself, a director, and a gaffer. That's run and gun as it gets. But one of the biggest tips and tricks that it took for me for this project is, I had the idea of shooting T8, that's out the door. We didn't control the place. We didn't have a very deep lighting package. So for us, it was run and gun, move quick, and shoot a little more wide open. I believe we shot on the URSA Mini 4.6K Pro whatever. I think because it was so run and gun, we might have just used the agency's camera and lenses, which I believe they're the Zine T1.5. Shout out Shane Hurlburt, being the only person who's pushed those lenses. They have a purpose, maybe. I mean, back in the day, I thought they were great. There was one project that I shot with the Zines and URSA combo with that same agency that I'm not upset with that footage. And maybe I will show some of that right here. Take a brief break from the Dierbergs food commercial shootout. Here are just a few of my favorite shots from this little ad for this school. And it was telling a cute little story of the curiosity of these kids and what it's like to break free from their current grade and go explore what's the next classroom they're going to be in as they continue to get older. It was a cute video. It was another run and gun kind of situation. I wouldn't say run and gun. We had control of the place, but it was another small thing. Myself and the director. It was what made up the crew. So we did what we could. URSA Mini, 4.6K Pro, Zines, Dolly, of course, and those are, one of those is his kid, and one is the other one is another kid who works. The parents work there. So, but happy with the way that turned out. We shot that years ago. Those kids might be in high school by now. Actually, I think the kids are in high school by now. So. Anyway, back to it. All right, back to the grocery store. Back to Bob's Barbecue. If you are going run and gun and you don't have the big crew, what you have for you is trying to lean into the abstract. When you don't have the flexibility of lighting up a whole place, you've got to think smaller. Think those detailed shots. Think smoke rising from the chimney or fire logs being tossed in to the smoker. Or the guy brushing off his hands, At every Dierbergs, they have this outdoor smoker. We wrapped on the inside, underneath the covering, Titan tubes with magnets. And we went yellow, crazy warm yellow, and a crazy red, which complements the logo for Bob's Barbecue. And it also feels, that yellow and red does feel barbecue-y. So it worked. And I knew that the smoke coming out would catch that. So it brought the viewer's eyes in. When you don't have the room to go big, you gotta go macro, which is easier to create more of a cinematic image too. When you have less control, and you're going macro, you can control those things. You can bring some shape and shadow. Or at least most grocery stores are brightly lit and boring. Trying to create some shape and mood, you gotta lean into those early mornings around the barbecue pit And when you go inside, you got to find ways to keep it, keep that same kind of look going, even though if you've got a small crew. URSA Mini 4.6K Pro does not handle the highlights of fire well. This is one of the big examples of, sure, the depth of field is nice, but that super blown out highlight, that's just an example of that camera. The URSA Mini would have not done that. And then a big reveal of the meat inside the smoker. One of the big things to make things look good, especially on food shoots, is backlight, backlight, backlight. On all my food shots, I start with that, and then I fill in the shapes, whether that's with a light or just simple return bounce, depending on what you're trying to do. And then of course you got your top light and some other accent lights. But for us, the smoker was only one door opens it up to expose, and then it just felt flat and dead, and it was too dark. It was also really difficult to point a camera inside a black pit with shiny reflections of that chrome doors with daylight, ambient, blue or early morning light spilling in. That's a hard level of exposure to stay balanced. So with the approval of the gaffer and those handy dandy Quasar like bicolor tubes, they're like this long. They come like in a pack of 3. They got a little short guy, a medium guy, and a long one. They come in this like cool like briefcase kind of thing. That gaffer owns 2 of those, and they've been super handy on these kind of things. Quickly able to just magnet them to somewhere and change from bicolor, like from tungsten to 4,500 degrees Kelvin to 5,600 degrees Kelvin, and then you've got a few exposures in between. Big fan of that light. So much so that I got to buy the gaffer 2 more of those lights after we decided we should put them inside the smoker, magnet them to the wall so they can expose to the chicken and the salmon and the ribs, and so we can get some light inside there. So a little pro tip, when shooting a smoker, just because it has magnets, don't put your lights inside the smoker. A real commercial shoot, they'd use the smoker, but all the smoke would be fake. The thing wouldn't be on, and we would be able to do things like that. Not in this case. We were running a gunna, babies. So this was a hot smoker. You live and you learn. Let's put it that way. And then, we go inside to sauce up some of these wings. Still trying to do backlight, but now we're in their kitchen area and trying to bring some energy to this. So, I think the food tossing of the chicken was going to be some cool shots, but really difficult when the location is not great. Everywhere you looked was so difficult, like boring, sterile white walls inside the back of, the deli section or something. So I try to go up and look down for color. I at least enjoy the look of stainless steel and what that can do to lights. So you can catch some red reflections from our Titan tubes, kicking off wherever we decide to put them, just to give us some color contrast. But that's about all you can do when you're running a gun. And then we end with this like plated food shot of the chicken wings, which, they're nice and sauced up. Maybe a rotopolo would have come in handy. I might have had one in there. I probably didn't, based on how much reflections are going on. You see one clean, long shadow from this, and that's because you got a backlight first, and then any of your filling is just to raise up the overall ambient. Top lights should be also soft if we have them. We didn't have them. And I think we just did one of those white paper kind of rolls, or a white sheet on top of a table, and got up high enough that it felt infinity. But this is where that T8 comes in handy. This is where you can get all your chicken wings in focus. And we tried a few different setups. But for me, honestly, this shot was something more for me. I felt like I needed to get some more food shots on my reel so that some of the other directors who I know have been reaching out, I can show them some options. Hey, I can do this too. Hire me. Kind of thing. But the project kind of called for it, but I really wanted to make sure we had a plated finished food shot, and we mixed it up, threw a beer in there just to get some color contrast. Now that beer was so light, we should have gone for something darker. I know you want a light beer because the wings and the light beer kind of go well together, but maybe choose something a little darker just to get a little more color. Once we were inside, one of the things we kept with was using the Dana Dolly to create some motion that's smooth and controlled, showing the display where all the barbecue is, where, customers can grab it. But once we got to showing one of the customers where they were coming to buy the food, that's where we went handheld. That's where, now we're shaking it up. Now there's some more energy, there's some more life to it. So here's a pro tip when you're shooting a run and gun campaign. One of the ways to make a small project feel big is just mixing up the type of movement you've got. It needs to fit narratively what you're shooting. But when you can feel handheld shots mixed with Dolly smooth shots, I mean, the moment you know you get a nice petting shot, that's when you know you got a fisher on there, or you can trick it maybe with a gimbal. Top-down shots, mixing these different frames make the overall project feel bigger. Of course, locations will always make the project feel bigger. But when you're a small crew, yourself, a gaffer, and the director, you've got to get creative. For us, narratively, we were doing most of the store stuff smooth with the Dolly, shots of the display of the barbecue, shots of one of the workers setting it out. But when it came time to bring one of the customers in, that's when we kind of broke the fourth wall. Now we're in normal speed and bringing that energy in. And now I'm going handheld. And that, one, make this feel different than the other kind of footage. But two, also help us go faster. This wasn't an actual customer. This is a friend from the agency who came in to volunteer their time. So we needed to also respect their time. This is a very run and gun shoot. So we had to do this kind of quick. So that handheld stuff in the store was just mixing up, trying to make things feel cinematic, trying to get some variations, trying to elevate this project with just 3 people. Even though you would want to stop down to show more of the product, to me, a whole mess of barbecue meats isn't the most attractive looking visuals. So kind of staying wide open was the move. Yeah, just a bunch of different variety of meats don't always look that great on camera. Sure, the gloss and the shine is nice, and that's coming from the hot lamps and then some of the red light. I said, just push red light at it. Barbecue is red. Let's push some of that light in there. The customer picks it up and then she serves it to her kids magically at home. It wasn't at home. This final shot was at a test kitchen upstairs, at Bob's Barbecue or at Dierbergs. They host events there and they do cooking classes and cooking stuff for, their customers. But it was a challenge. How can we make this look like her house? Well, everyone's got a stove and there's some cabinets there. So it was just all about being narrow. If you got any wider, you would see the giant kitchen and it does not look like someone's home. So you had to stay tight. And then of course, how to also make it feel like home, you got to stick some tungsten in. So we pushed a little tungsten light coming through, raking against the back wall, wrapping around their face and trying to give that food a nice little pop while she slides it towards them. And we end on just a shot of her and her boys eating some delicious barbecue. Well, this was a little bit of an older project, but I'm pretty proud with what we were able to create. A director, a gaffer, and myself working around the pit boss's schedule. So they smoke meat early in the morning. I think things go on the grill at 4 a.m. So we're up there super early. The sun hasn't come up. We're pushing our own moonlight. We're working entirely around them. If you want to do this the right way, they do shoot overnights, and you would trick things. For this case, that smoker had to smoke the meats for the customers that day. So there was no working around it. We had to get the shots we had to get. And I was impressed of what the URSA Mini 4.6K can do. I definitely see its weakness with highlights. It can't hold up against a fire to save its life. That dynamic range is not more than 12 stops. And last but not least, just because you've got magnets on it doesn't mean you should probably put it in the smoker. Luckily for me, we used those Quasars instead of Titan tubes. That would have been way bigger of an expense to replace. Those Titan tubes are super handy. We put them inside the display case to illuminate Bob's Barbecue's logo and just kind of, people use tubes inside these kind of food display cases anyway. So it was a nice tool to have on set. Well, if you want to see more of my work, you can check out stevensecrethouse.com. Thanks for watching. Peace.